Greetings, this is Morris Howard Ervin Jr., and I'm happy to be a part of the NVC or Nonviolent Communication community. Today I want to talk about the distinction of vulnerability versus weakness, and also the distinction of freedom to choose versus submission or rebellion. So as someone who's been living and teaching and sharing in NVC for the past 15 years, and lots of personal spaces, a lot of professional spaces in schools and communities, corporations and universities, NVC is really the process of creating consciousness that taps into our ability to give, our natural ability to give from the heart. And it's not always the words, it's about the connectedness that you feel. It's about the consciousness that you create. So the distinction of vulnerability versus strength. And oftentimes, living in society, I identify as a black man of African descent. And living in society, there are challenges with being in my skin, but also being able to connect from a vulnerable place of my feelings and my values based on my experiences from the past, present, and eventually the future. So vulnerable. I use my vulnerability in many spaces where I'm educating and I'm teaching. And I always start with my own personal experiences as a father, my experiences, my mistakes, lots of mistakes I've made. And also as a husband, because that's where I've really got a lot of my training and development, using the language of feelings and needs and being able to mourn and make mistakes and learn and grow as a father and a husband. And now my professional career as an educator, a speaker, a consultant, a trainer, a healer, a storyteller, and a youth development professional, I've also used these spaces to also be vulnerable. But one particular example where I use vulnerability as a strength is a performer. I'm a storyteller. In April 23rd, 1999, I was pulled over with myself, my wife, and my infant daughter. And I was assaulted by police officers, pulled out of the window for supposedly running a red light, beaten, slammed around, choked out, and arrested. And when they put me in a squad car, they left my wife and my daughter on the side of a darkened road, stranded. And another part to that story was being taken to a parking lot by the police officers, and they took the cuffs off of me. And that was the scariest moment of my life, and my life flashed before me. And eventually I made it out of the situation and got to the police station, and they charged me, and eventually went to court and they dropped charges. But I often tell that story in spaces, especially when I'm talking about racism and anti-oppression and the domination society that we've all been conditioned to play our role, where one group of people are considered superior and another group of people are considered inferior. Now, we know that needs are universal, but some needs are just more important than other needs. So when me particularly, speaks up for justice and equality and to be heard and to be seen, I might look different than somebody in white skin. Let's just be honest. And I use that vulnerability of sharing that experience on stage is to create an opening, even if I'm challenging people's views, or it's an opportunity for other experiences to be expressed similar to mine. I am a survivor, not a victim. And I'm healing through that situation even 20 years later. But now I've metabolized that experience into something that's powerful because I've learned from it and I've grown from it. And I think that's the power of vulnerability, is to really share from a place of a vulnerable place or a place that was once insecure. And now you've learned the lesson and a blessing from that. And now it's a place of power, a place of freedom, a place of peace. And with the language of feelings and needs. I can really connect with myself and connect with what was the needs that I had in that situation of safety and dignity and choice and the officers' power in their world. And that can allow me to mourn when I connect to the need that was missing from the situation that wasn't met for me, and possibly the need that they tried to meet on that uneventful night. Also, freedom to choose versus submit versus rebellion, which is oftentimes in this society, this current climate with police brutality and the state of our nation around race relations and the Black Lives Matter movement and white privilege. Like, where does real freedom come from? And real freedom comes from the ability to choose, right? And someone of African American heritage and African descent in this society, oftentimes it's hard for me to choose because of being labeled, the stereotypes, the judgments, the perceptions when people see me, right? But oftentimes for me, I notice it and name it, even the judgments and the perceptions I have about myself, and I pause and I create a space of discernment and real compassion for myself and even others. And then I have the freedom to choose. And because if not, being in my skin is often submitting to the dominant culture or rebelling or acting out of my suppressed rage and anger and disgust. So the place that I want to live is to notice my emotions, name them, let them be, and then connect with the space of freedom to choose from my discernment and my space of compassion. There's a quote that I love in CNVC that says, out beyond ideas of who's right and who's wrong, there's a field. I will meet you there. And that's the place where we can all choose, outside of our conditions and our perceptions of power over and power under, to the beauty and the space that lies within the power with, the shared reality. But to get to a space of shared reality, we have to acknowledge the ugly. We have to acknowledge the hundreds of years of oppression and domination and discrimination and violence perpetuated against Black people and other people of color and other marginalized groups. Until we are able to acknowledge that from a real space of vulnerability, then that will be our strength. If we can't, we will continue to hide out behind our positions of power, status, and continue to fight over resources. So that was my distinction today. Real freedom versus submission or rebellion. And also the distinction of vulnerability is a strength. Morris Howard Ervin Jr. Peace.